Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor of the State of California, the Honorable Ronald Reagan. Don't break your hands,
Governor, how are you? Happy New Year.
All mine, I'm on? Yeah. Fine. President Pro Tem Mills, Speaker Moretti, Assemblyman Carlos B., constitutional officers, members of the Senate and the Assembly, other representatives of government, and our visitors who are here with us today. For many of you, this occasion has more than the usual significance. Next year, some of you will pursue other avenues of public service, and some of us will be going on to the highest calling of all, that of private citizen. Yet whatever path we follow as individuals, the effective functioning of government will go forward uninterrupted. More than any words of praise, that's the most eloquent tribute to the enduring strength of our system. Now, usually, on this occasion and at this time, it's my task to set forth a series of goals for the year ahead, the laundry list, as it's called. But the energy crisis has created some unique challenges for our state and our country this year. So I shall also ask you to join me in making decisions to assure progress and prosperity for California, not just in the year ahead, but for decades. When I first appeared before you 7 years ago, I expressed my belief that nothing is impossible for a people who place their ultimate faith in divine guidance and a government which has faith in the people it serves. As someone new to government, bringing a perspective of a concerned citizen, I said, California, with its climate, its resources, and its wealth of young, aggressive, talented people, must never take second place. We can provide jobs for all our people who will work, and we can have honest government at a price we can afford. Indeed, unless we accomplish this, our problems will go unsolved, our dreams unfulfilled, and we will know the taste of ashes. Well, those beliefs expressed then have only been strengthened by my experience in these past 7 years. You and I and other officials who preceded you have traveled a long road together. We've achieved much, and we've experienced crisis, including the fiscal insolvency that confronted our state in 1967. We've worked together, and we have on a few occasions strongly disagreed, and all of us on some issues have known the taste of ashes. Today, I'd like to review some of the problems we faced and measure our progress. And I would also like to share a few impressions which I hope you will receive in the sincere spirit in which they're offered. Anyone who occupies that corner office downstairs has a unique view of the vast and sometimes slow-moving process of government, the pressures and the pitfalls. Now, can you avoid forming strong opinions on how we might do things better, be more effective in meeting our responsibility? Years after he drafted the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson recalled his role in casting those noble phrases that still guide our country. He said, while the words were his, the theme of liberty and justice reflected the sentiments of all America. Well, the sentiments I express to you, some reforms I shall suggest, I don't believe are mine alone. I think they reflect the views of a great many people in California. There's a feeling among our people of distrust and cynicism toward public affairs and public officials. It matters little that some of the events which contribute to this cynicism are not of our making. Our people know that we face many crucial decisions. They expect us to make those decisions based on only what is best for the future of this state and of this nation, and what's best for all people. This is an election year, but it's not a time for politics as usual. Our people are weary of partisanship and discord. Harry Truman once said a statesman is what they call a politician after he's safely dead. Well, at this moment in our history, what we need is more live statesmen at every level of public life. We must demonstrate that government deserves the public's trust, I think we can be proud of what we've already achieved. We've reordered priorities to control costs and assure funds for essential services. We've cut, squeezed, and trimmed, and at every opportunity we returned the benefit of those savings to the people. I think all of us are a little surprised when we added up to discover that tax relief in these past 7 years totals more than $4 billion. This has been in the form of 3 income tax rebates. This year it's a 20 to 35% rebate for most taxpayers and total elimination of the 1973 state income tax for families earning $8,000 or less. Homeowners are getting lower property tax bills this year because of property tax exemptions. We've expanded senior citizens' property tax relief, adopted tax credits for renters, cut the inventory tax in half, and provided tax incentives to preserve agricultural and greenbelt areas. And yet at the same time, we've almost doubled the state's support for public schools, while enrollment was going up less than 6%. We've budgeted for higher education increases twice as fast as the increase in enrollment. A few years ago, the teachers' retirement system was a $4 billion unfunded liability, an actuarial nightmare. Now, as we know, it is soundly financed and teachers' pensions are protected. The Great Water Project, underfunded, faced higher costs and possible delays. It is being completed without massive new tax burdens. And none of this would have been possible without reforms and reorganizations, streamlining of government, and controlling the growth in size and cost. Our community mental health program and welfare reform that we adopted have become models for the nation. Welfare is no longer growing by 40,000 a month. There are 384,000 fewer people on the rolls than when we started those reforms. We've increased the benefits for the truly needy, and mainly because of welfare reform, basic property tax rates are down this year in 45 of the 58 counties. We created a Consumer Affairs Department, which has won national acclaim. We've expanded the mutual aid program to help police cope with riots and other emergencies. We've toughened the penalties for violent crimes. Total increase in the 7 major crimes showed almost zero growth in 1972. Death rate on our highways has gone down a full 20% since 1967. One thing is clear: we served the people best when we paid more attention to problems and less to politics. The issue demanding our attention this year is the energy crisis. To minimize its potential impact would be a disservice to the people. We know it'll affect almost every part of our economy and every citizen, and we must all join in meeting the challenge. It will reduce our anticipated revenues. Although economic activity is expected to be reasonably strong in 1974, there will be a downturn from the previous forecasts. But to answer one question you may have, the budget I present to you this week will be balanced. The scheduled income tax rebates and property tax reductions will go forward. I see no need for any general tax increase in this next fiscal year. Many factors beyond the control of any individual or state have led to the present energy crisis. The cutoff of Arabian oil produced there is an important cause, but it's only one factor. We've just been consuming energy faster than we've been developing new sources of fuel and electric power. Now, some have caused confusion by denying this, and some others have cried that we weren't warned. Why weren't we told that this was coming? Well, we were. As a matter of fact, in 1960, in Los Angeles, California, the American Association of Petroleum Geologists said, between now and 1975, we will have an energy crisis. And they added, then the people will say, the industry is to blame. Why weren't we told? And they added, we're telling them now. Well, since then, the drain on existing resources has been increased by higher fuel demands of smog-controlled automobile engines. At the same time, industry and utilities have been inhibited or prevented from using available fuel because of requirements necessary to meet stricter environmental standards. California was the first to recognize the smog problem and the first to do something about it. We've adopted strong measures to clean up air and water. I don't believe we need abandon this environmental progress. But where energy needs conflict with environmental goals, we must strike a reasonable balance. It'll do little good for someone to have all the gas he can use if he has no job to drive to because the industry for which he worked is shut down by an energy or a fuel shortage. The Energy Planning Council, headed by Lieutenant Governor Reineke, has been closely coordinating our programs to minimize the energy crisis in California. A poet once said, "The best ways to lengthen our days is to steal a few hours from night." Well, we've already done that with daylight savings time. You acted in a special session to reduce the speed limits in California highways to 55 miles per hour. By executive order, we seek a 10% reduction in auto mileage by state vehicles. We've encouraged carpools and taken steps to reduce unnecessary state travel. If we can achieve comparable reductions by the general public, there is a potential savings in oil of 120,000 barrels a day next year. By turning off the central plant that heats downtown state buildings here in Sacramento 4 hours each night and on weekends, by resetting the thermostats, we achieved a substantial cutback in the use of fuel and power. Because eliminating unnecessary use of fuel and power is one of the most effective short-term solutions, I am today asking California motorists to reduce their own personal gas consumption by a minimum of 10%. I also ask every family and every business to reduce energy use 10% by taking similar steps in their homes and places of business. We've made a formal request to the federal government to open the Elk Hills Naval Oil Reserve to pump enough oil to meet current military requirements. This would free the oil and gas the military now consumes to meet civilian needs while we work toward more permanent solutions. The State Lands Commission has lifted restrictions against offshore oil drilling. The Air Resources Board has deferred the oxides of nitrogen control program for 1966 to 70 automobiles. That'll save an estimated 100 million gallons of gas a year. Now, California stands ready to cooperate fully in any national program to conserve and fairly apportion the available fuel and electric power. Because agriculture is the backbone of our economy, it must have a high priority along with industry. Any severe cutbacks in energy for industry and agriculture means fewer jobs. We must frankly recognize that our economic vitality depends on sufficient energy and fuel for these essential uses. We are acting to meet the energy crisis. But you and I also must act this year to meet our energy needs on a permanent basis. For 3 years, we've asked for legislation to streamline the ways by which the environmentally protected nuclear power plant sites are authorized and approved. We're prepared to work with you to reconcile our obvious differences, but we must act soon. By 1990, America's energy requirements are expected to double. By the end of the century, 45% of our electricity must be generated by nuclear power. We cannot afford needless delays caused by those who can't see that people also are ecology. We saw an example of this only a few weeks ago when the State Coastal Commission rejected a plan to add 2 new nuclear generating units at San Onofre. Adding these units would reduce our oil needs by 24 million barrels a year and help protect against future blackouts and brownouts. This project was approved by the Atomic Energy Commission, by state and regional water quality boards. Air pollution and fish and game requirements were met. It was cleared by every unit of government except one commission, and even a majority of that commission favored it. Construction of these and other nuclear units must go forward. Time is running out. In a very few years, oil from Alaska's North Slope will be ready for delivery. But the United States doesn't have any port capable of handling supertankers. So we must plan now for the California facilities that may be required to meet our oil needs. Existing hydroelectric plants in California now generate power that would otherwise require 65 million barrels of oil a year. The Department of Water Resources is exploring ways to expand this source of smog-free electricity, possibly by adding new generating units at Oroville and other existing dam sites. Along with this, we must develop geothermal energy, move forward on solar energy research, and every other promising means of meeting our energy needs. The energy problem is a crisis now, but it can be an historic opportunity to free America forever from dependence on unstable foreign oil that can be turned on and off at will by those who would use world commerce for economic blackmail and coercion. If we can put a man on the moon, we can find ways to heat and light our homes and our industries. But this crisis must not become a means of expanding bureaucracy. or of giving vast powers to non-elected officials. The responsibility for solving the energy problem, for educational and economic policy, for crime control, for meeting all our needs must always rest with elected officials who answer to the people. In education today, one great need is more effective management of our public schools. To help achieve this, we're planning an Academy for Educational Management, which will help administrators gain the knowledge and experience necessary to assure maximum value for every dollar spent on education. If successful on a test basis, it will become a nonprofit corporation serving the entire state. This is an excellent example of state and local government cooperation on a major problem. And I'd like to thank Dr. Richard Close, the Los Angeles County Superintendent of Schools, and his task force which conceived and helped develop this concept. We'll ask the trustees of the California State Universities and Colleges to establish a Doctor of Arts degree program to give teaching the professional recognition it deserves. We will seek the help of the State Board of Education in devising ways to encourage excellence in teaching in the public schools. I'm sure that you won't be stunned with surprise if I confess that economy and government is a special concern of mine. It's essential to reduce and limit the tax burden on our people if our free economic system is to survive. Even while differing over specifics, many of you have said only recently that legislative action can control the size and cost of government. And I ask you to take that action this year. The state constitution now requires the governor to submit a balanced budget and to propose higher taxes if necessary to make sure it is balanced. Since two safeguards are better than one, I shall ask you to pass a constitutional amendment imposing the same restraint on the legislative branch. It will specify that the legislature must return to the governor a balanced budget or propose additional taxes necessary to bring it into balance. To further encourage realistic budgeting, we will ask you to adopt laws requiring that any bill costing $1 million or more must include provisions for increased revenues to finance it, or specify a way to reduce the budget by any amount necessary to absorb the cost of the new program. Every bill having a fiscal impact must include a synopsis declaring the bill's initial year cost and the cost for the following 3 years. Every bill imposing major new costs must have a separate fiscal analysis noting whether it can be financed with existing revenues or whether a tax increase is necessary. If higher taxes are required, this fact and the amount of the new taxes required should be spelled out clearly and simply in capital letters. By doing this, the taxpayers will be able to more accurately identify the cost of new programs and decide for themselves whether those proposing new costs are serving the people's best interest. To merit the confidence of the people, government must keep faith with the people. The tolls on our state bridges originally were imposed to pay off the revenue bonds that financed those structures. We're nearing a time when these debts can be retired, and we should adopt a policy now of phasing out bridge tolls as these bonds are paid. Many other things command our attention. Unified Departments of Transportation and Health are now operational, working on programs to meet the long-range transportation and health needs of our people. In 1974 and beyond, the state will become increasingly involved in helping prevent and treat developmental disabilities that stem from epilepsy, mental retardation, and cerebral palsy. The Department of Benefit Payments, which you approved, will become operational in July and will consolidate the state's $5 billion a year fiscal operations in welfare, health, unemployment, and disability programs. Another reorganization of the Department of Employment Development comes into being at a time when the energy crisis may put new strains on our economy. The major emphasis is to develop new jobs, then direct qualified workers to those jobs. We also plan to explore with leaders in labor and business all possibilities for minimizing unemployment impact of the energy crisis. The Community Work Experience Program and that part of welfare reform which identified able-bodied recipients as employable has been put into operation in all 35 designated counties. Last year in those counties, 46% of the employable welfare recipients who registered found regular jobs. Thanks to bipartisan support, California now has the nation's strongest forest practices regulations, augmenting our nationally recognized efforts to fight air and water pollution. I will ask for support this year for a $250 million bond issue to help provide additional parks to carry on wildlife conservation programs. The California Ecology Corps, created by executive order, is a proven success in protecting forest areas and providing wholesome work opportunities for young people. So I shall ask for a law to make it permanent. The California Council on Criminal Justice, and renamed the Office of Criminal Justice Planning. The Select Committee on Law Enforcement Problems outlined other steps which we must take to streamline our criminal justice system and otherwise strengthen our ability to protect the law-abiding. I will ask you to consider its recommendations, particularly those which require stricter controls on probation policies. The proposal to impose mandatory prison sentences for those who commit a crime while armed. Those who commit a crime with a gun must go to prison. Where there is any doubt in granting probation or parole, the doubt must be resolved in favor of protecting society. Our task force on local government reform will soon offer a sweeping review of our entire governmental structure and suggest ways to make it better equipped to serve the people. Our goal is less government, but more effective government. To achieve this, all of us may find that the facts that challenging many of our own long-held beliefs and assumptions. Already we found that the authority of local government to make its own decisions has been seriously eroded by state and federal mandates. So we'll propose ways to restore local control in local government, to make it easier to create smaller units of government and to consolidate where that best serves the people. Finally, a subject that touches the very heart of our system of elective responsibility, campaign and election reforms. The integrity of the process by which we elect our public officials must never be in doubt. In recent years, an increasing use of the initiative, some involving complex subjects, has made the ballots long and far too complicated. Along with campaign and disclosure requirements already in force, we should eliminate conflicts of interest in all phases of the election process. Last year, you passed and I signed a law giving the Legislative Council responsibility for analyzing proposed ballot measures. It had been divided between the legislative analyst and the Council. Since the legislature itself proposes constitutional amendments, isn't there a built-in conflict of interest to have any employee of the legislature analyze ballot measures for cost and content? There also has been a greatly expanded role for the Secretary of State's office in the conduct of elections, in reporting campaign contributions, and with the growing use of computers, even in operational details of elections. Those are responsibilities that cannot, in my opinion, be free of the possibility of conflict of interest and bias unless the office itself is freed of partisanship. Therefore, I shall ask you to propose to the people a constitutional amendment making the office of Secretary of State nonpartisan, selected on the same basis as the nonpartisan State Superintendent of Public Education. We shall also delegate to an independent, or should delegate to an independent Citizens Commission on Elections the responsibility for analyzing initiatives and otherwise monitoring election reforms. Such a commission could establish campaign and election policies in the same way the State Board of Education guides educational policy. What I've listed so far can make this a very busy year of decision. There may be difficult choices. It's our duty to make them. It's our duty to reconcile our differences without regard for partisanship or personal ambitions. We dare not condemn our society to economic, environmental, or social stagnation because some fear change. In the long sweep of history, all human progress has been based on a willingness to face the next great challenge, to seek and achieve what has seemed impossible. Our people have done that in California and in America on a scale unmatched anywhere in this globe. Their vision and skills have lifted man's horizons to the far reaches of space and beyond. We have looked back on a proud past, but only to preserve the best of our heritage. In all other ways, we've looked forward with courage and confidence. Those nations and states which have secured man's highest aspirations for freedom, opportunity, and justice have always been those willing to trust their people. Those societies which falter or merely survive are those which lack this faith, which have been unwilling to do whatever it takes to excel. I believe our people want a nation that points the way, that's willing to work and struggle to overcome every barrier to the fulfillment of their own personal dreams and aspirations. If the people are prosperous, the state and the nation will be prosperous and strong enough to protect freedom. In the decades since World War II, California has been a place where men still dare to think big and act boldly to reach their goals. It has been our destiny to be a lodestar of progress in agriculture, in industry, in sophisticated technology, and in meeting the needs of our people within a framework of freedom. We're a showcase for the future. It's within our power to mold that future this year and for decades to come. It can be as grand and as great as we're willing to make it. No crisis is beyond the capacity of our people to solve, no challenge too great. It'll require a willingness to work, determination, and faith. Faith in ourselves, in our fellow citizens, and in this system of freedom. But if we hold fast to the great principles that gave birth to this nation and this state, if we're willing to work and reason together, we can shape our destiny. The problems today can become the opportunities of tomorrow. Thank you.
I hear you're going to have to resign as speaker if you run for governor.
Don't bet all your money on that.
To help run that up.
Beverly.